For Victims and Villains, my name is Josh. Today we are sneaking in to talk about The Strangers, Chapter 1. Now, The Strangers, Chapter 1 is the first chapter in a reboot chapter from Renny Harlin that this story in particular, is telling the same exact story beats as the 2008 original with a few minor changes. I'll be completely honest with you on this one. This movie, as far as horror remakes go, is just okay. This is one of those remakes that, to a certain extent, follows the formula of the first film's story beat so closely that it's painfully predictable. Like, there are little nods in the beginning that you're kind of like, oh, like they altered this portion of the story and they've done this just slightly different. And then there reaches a point in the film, and it feels like quite a drastic change where every story beat is exactly the same. And honestly, I never thought that I would say the third act from Pray at Night was going to be better than this film's climax, but it's hands down way better. Now, I will say that there are things about this movie that I do like. For the first time in the franchise, that they are kind of using a fish out of water story. So when you look at the first two entries in the film, it is families or a couple that are staying in a somewhat familiar home to them, and then they happen to be invaded upon by the strangers, whereas it's kind of a little bit differently with this one. And I thought that was kind of a cool reinvention of the story. Until they wasted it. I really feel like that fish out of water element allows for some real natural tension and suspense to build place. If Barbarian taught us nothing a couple of years ago, and this film just does nothing with it. The tension is just non-existent here. And when you look at the very first Strangers film, that's what made it such a fantastic little film, was the fact that it had tension between not only its main characters, but main characters leading in to this home invasion concept. And it just doesn't work here. It's boring, it's predictable, and above all, it's like there are literal parts in this movie where I was like starting to doze. And I don't say that lightly, and I never want to like insult somebody's art in that way, but this movie is just painful to watch in certain parts. Now, there are little nuggets that Renny Harlin does lay here in terms of story beats that I thought were interesting, that kind of give me hope for the future. They really built up this small town of Venus, Oregon, where the story takes place, and I thought that was interesting. They really kind of built up the religious angle, although it does feel weird to me that you would put that in the Northwest and not in the Bible Belt. But I'm kind of here to kind of see where those story beats go. Honestly, walking out of this movie, I kind of hope that the sequel feels a little bit more akin to Rob Zombie's duology of Halloween films, and let me explain. So when you look at Rob Zombie's first Halloween, it's a pretty standard, pretty almost sometimes shot-for-shot remake of John Carpenter's 78 classic. And when you get into the sequel, it feels like it carries that tone over, but yet somehow it's been zombified. And it's weird, but yet it's a character-driven story that's just gripping. And I'm really kind of hoping that it's the same relationship between The Strangers 1, 2, and 3. I'm hoping that they're like, all right, we've got the standard remake out there now. Let's get down and let's kind of shake things up. There's definitely a bunch of story angles that I feel like the remaining chapters in this trilogy could dive into, and I'm kind of hoping they will, but we'll find out when the subsequent sequels are released. But as a first entry into the chapter, this one just kind of lays a really weak foundation. I will say I also really liked the updated character design of the Strangers. I think the man in the mask looks particularly creepy. He looks simplified but really creepy, and I also loved what they did kind of with the females, where they had the hair up, they had the black hat, and then the mask kind of sat over. I just kind of thought that really was just spectacular. The way that the shadows lit them just made them extra creepy. I feel like this film has something that I really love, and then just as equally has something that I loathe about this movie. So we follow Madelaine Petsch and Froy Gutierrez, who play kind of our main couple throughout the course of this film. I thought the acting for both of them was fine. There are definite times in this movie where their chemistry works and it feels natural, and then there are definite times where it feels forced and it just kind of feels really awkward. And at the end of the day, I think that's more Gutierrez than it is Petsch. And I say that because there are moments in this movie where Gutierrez as an actor is fine. But how he reacts to certain things, I know that's a weird thing to say, but how he reacts to certain things or his eye mark, it just kind of feels off to what's actually taking place on screen. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. It just kind of felt like there were moments in the movie that dealt with Gutierrez's character that just took me out. And with that, I am ready to run this through the Rorschach rating scale. I am going to go ahead and give The Strangers Chapter 1 a 2.5 out of 5. This film is an extreme mixed bag. This film has portions of it, almost 85% of it is a shot-for-shot remake of 2008's original film. There are slight details that are altered, but ultimately the story hits the same, making it painfully predictable, boring execution, shoddy acting sometimes, and on the flip side of that, it does plant these seeds that could potentially create and craft a really interesting future for the remaining of Harlin's trilogy, but it remains to be unseen. As far as a first foundations for this one goes, this is a messy execution. 2.5. If you guys have seen The Strangers Chapter 1, what did you guys think? Comment below and let me know. Do you prefer this one or Pray at Night? If you guys have seen either or, let me know. Now, my plan for this trilogy as it goes on, as I will be rewatching each of these movies as their sequels come out. I'm going to be doing mental health videos in the coming months for those particular titles. So there will be no mental health for this one. So check out The Strangers Pray at Night now. It is now in theaters from Lionsgate. And in the show notes below, you guys will find links to our mental health resource library, all of our podcasts, movie reviews, upcoming events, Patreon, and that subscribe button. So until next time, remember to stay classy and stay spooky.